And essentially, what we do here is we talk about personal finance. We want to make it personal to you. We want to talk about your money and how the economic news and trends out there does affect you personally. We're talking about personal finance. We are talking about the economy, and we're talking about cash flow. What does it mean to you as an individual? This week, we are talking about mortgages. How can I get a mortgage? We want to make this caveat. We are talking about a scalable institutional way to get a mortgage, right? We also want to talk about, we want to compare, say, Nigeria to other climates, other investment climates out there. If I am a Nigerian earning, let's pick a figure, ₦1 million a month. So I earn 12 million naira a year. Where is the easier, or where is there a pathway for me to get a mortgage? Is it in Nigeria or is it outside Nigeria? So if I earn a million, that's give or take about, let's just assume it's say $1,500 or $1,400. If I earn that amount of money in America and in Nigeria, where can I buy a mortgage? And why is it possible for me to buy that mortgage, say, outside the country and not in Nigeria? Because 12 million a year in Nigeria, it's a lot of money. If you earn that, you are definitely in the 1% in Nigeria. But do you have a mortgage? This is the problem, and this is the question we'd like to talk about today. So, I mean, it's going to be open forum. We want to learn. I want to learn. I understand how I can get that house in Nigeria. But before we do, guys, let me give you guys a few stats just to get us warm, just to give you guys where I'm coming from. My thesis, and just so you know where I'm coming from, I believe that Nigeria places a lot of burdens on you if you're a high earner. So what I mean is this: if you earn a million a month in Nigeria, you are to the 1%, but you still cannot get that mortgage in Nigeria, even with that high income. There is no sustainable, clear pathway for you to say, I'm going to do one, two, three, four. And if I do one, two, three, four, I'm going to get a house. Let's talk data first of all. So I'm quoting the Association of Housing Corporation of Nigeria's chairman, right? And his name is Dr. Victor Okwogba, right? And he's saying the Nigerian home ownership percentage is about 25%. So in Africa, and with the say developing economies, Nigeria has a very, very, very low rate of home ownership. It's about 25%. You compare this with Kenya. Kenya has 75% home ownership. South Africa, 70%. Indonesia, 84%. Brazil, 74%. So how come Kenyans are able to build a home and own a home? 75% of them are able to do that. But Nigeria, if you compare Nigeria's income, the economy with Kenya, you would agree that we earn a lot more, maybe in dollar terms, and the economy is larger, obviously, in Nigeria. So how come the Kenyans can get a house and own that home, but only 25% of Nigerians can own that same home, right? We're not talking about America now. We're just talking about Kenya and compare that to Nigeria, right? So it's a big, big, big gap. I tried to Google the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria. I tried to find out how many mortgages literally have been created in Nigeria. Now, I'm quoting directly here. In 2021, the number of outstanding mortgages in Nigeria was 32,608. So they are quoting the year 2021. Essentially, they're saying that we've created less than, let's even give it a round figure, we've created less than 35,000 mortgages. So these are loans that have been created for Nigerians to buy homes. 35,000. To be clear, I'm not sure if they're speaking of 2021 or if they're speaking of from inception till 2021. But either ways you look at it, if we're only creating 32,000 mortgages for a country of 200 million, if you take the adult population that are working, let me give you a good number. If you just take the PENCOM, the retirement savings account ownership, it's about 8 to 10 million. If you compare 8 to 10 million with 32,000, because the PFAs give you the sense of the young Nigerians who are earning enough to contribute to a pension scheme. So that's a good sample for us. And that number is 8 to 10 million. But we are only creating about 32,608 mortgages. And we're quoting, of course, the Center for Affordable Housing Finance in Africa. So you can see the picture I'm painting here, that we don't have mortgages in Nigeria. We have maybe bank loans that give you a loan for 5 years to get a mortgage. But really, we don't have a mortgage. And that lack of mortgage, it shows up in the home ownership percentage in Nigeria. That's essentially what we're seeing. And I can keep going further. The Central Bank of Nigeria, in their financial system strategy 2020 presentation, the total housing stock in Nigeria is estimated at about 10 trillion. I think that's going to be 10 trillion, right? But only 5% is in a traditional mortgage. So the Central Bank of Nigeria is telling us that only 5% of the total housing stock is attached to a traditional mortgage. So then again, you have lots of folks that have built their homes in Nigeria, but did not go through a mortgage. They basically maybe saved money or got a loan from their family and friends or got a loan outside the formal financial structure and then they built a home. So again, the mortgages in Nigeria do not exist, and then the homes that are built in Nigeria are not being built with the formal financial market loans. So you see the two problems here. And if you then, if I can give you a quote again, right? From 1972 till the year 2012, that's where Nigeria had all that crude oil. We're counting Festac, we're counting all those homes that have been built. The federal government of Nigeria built less than 200,000 homes from 1972 all the way to 2012. So I'm including Abuja, I'm including Festac in Lagos, I'm including 1004. We built less than 200,000. This is the federal government of Nigeria. Even if you add maybe what last month Lagos State has built, which is a lot, we're not still not hitting 500,000. We're not hitting 500,000. So supply of homes, very low. Supply of homes with a mortgage, very low. Supply of loans as a whole in Nigeria, less than 5%. So guys, you see the picture now that I'm really painting. The picture I painted is very, very clear that even if you earn that 1 million a year in Nigeria, you're not going to get a mortgage. Not because mortgages don't exist in Nigeria, but the volume is so low that you are competing with perhaps 8 to 10 million Nigerians for just a small piece of a mortgage pie in Nigeria. And that's what translates steady to that very, very low home ownership rates that we quote in Nigeria. And before you ask, yes, I've done the figures, right? I pulled up in America. If you I converted the 1 million a year in Nigeria, I got to give or take about 1,425 in America, right? And there are homes in America that you can buy for $50,000, $60,000. You can get a loan in America. If you get a FHA, Federal Housing Authority loan, that's 3.5% down. They're going to ask you to maintain a DTI, a debt to income, for about 43%. And then if you run the numbers, your monthly pay on that home, if you run the numbers, is give or take about $474, about less than $500. So if the guy earns 1,400, he is able in America to buy a home for less than $60,000 and pay less than $500 because there's a mortgage available. If he keeps a good credit score and he pays his taxes, there's a clear pathway for that same Nigerian outside Nigeria to get a mortgage. So, guys, I have two speakers here. And again, I want to learn. The point is this: I want to hear the pathway. We don't want to hear more of this is how I did it, because lots of Nigerian own homes, like we said, the central bank has said about 10 trillion is the value of the homes, but only 5% are true loans. So we want to basically hear about this institutional pathway, this scalable pathway, what I can do. I want to hear what you've done and how we can all copy it. And if possible, what can Nigeria do? But the summary of what I've just quoted, all these figures, is to say that Nigeria really doesn't have a long-term mortgage market. And that translates, and that's why we see the very, very low rates of home ownership in Nigeria. Engineer Kabir Maji, How are you doing, sir? Welcome to Money Spaces with me. What do you have on your mind, sir? Go ahead, you got the floor. Engineer Kabir, can you hear me? You got to unmute and you can go ahead and speak, sir. All right, so engineer, I'll give you some time to log back in. AK, I've got Awal. Engineer, go ahead.
Hello, good evening, everyone.
Hey, how you doing, my brother?
I'm fine. I hope everyone is enjoying the break. This is a quite interesting topic that we are discussing here.
Yep.
And being it that it's to an extent related to my own field, I actually found it quite interesting. Like, as the name of the space implies, a pathway to securing a mortgage in Nigeria. To me, I think first and foremost, I would actually want to say that there has to be availability.
True, I agree.
There has to be availability for any commodity or whatever first before issue of actually securing it becomes a challenge. And as it stands now, just like from your initial submission, which I was able to hear, I think we can actually say that there is a serious shortfall of housing in Nigeria.
Mm-hmm.
Because, for example, I think you only have let's say federal housing projects in major cities. Even the major cities, but there's just few selected that are actually having the presence of federal housing projects here in where you can actually access. And for the other state capitals where you see some of them, it's actually quite laughable. For example, I'm working here in Nigeria State and I'm resident in Mina. There are houses that I saw that some of my colleagues are actually applying for ads. Like, by mere looking at them, they are not things that I actually advise anybody to go for. Because the quality is very poor and then the price is extremely high. Like, extremely high. And these are actually, let's say, mortgage projects that are supposed to be cheap. Because I always feel, for the housing something to be actually successful, there has to be, let's say, the competitiveness, in the sense that if I were to build my own house, then I think if I'm opting for a mortgage, it should be something that I feel I will have value for money for if I'm going for it, not something that maybe I feel I'm actually just being cheated because I don't have the money outrightly to buy it. Then I'm being forced to buy something of a low standard at an extremely high rate.
Okay.
You understand?
So yeah, let me ask you the question directly. Do you think, I mean, if a Nigerian made #1 million, and I'm not talking about buying a home in my village, you can buy a home for less than 100,000 naira. That's not what I'm talking about. Let's pick Lagos, let's pick Abuja, let's pick Port Harcourt. Let's also pick the cities around Lagos, maybe Ogun State, Aba, Nasarawa, around those three zones in Nigeria.
Yeah.
The point I'm making is that even if I earned #1 million, where is the pathway? My colleague that I was talking to was telling me about Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria. Fine, there's Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria, and you can save. It's a very, very good project. You get loans at single digit.
Yes.
It's for long, 15 years. That is fine. But I personally applied for Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria loan in 2007. At a point, 2007, I got a friend of mine to check. He says, yes, your file is there, blah, blah, blah. We're coming. I don't have that loan till today. So if it's a good loan and it's not available, right, then is it a good loan? It has to be available, right? Because that's the only mortgage I see in Nigeria. When I mean a mortgage, I mean a long-term loan. You can't say it's a mortgage if it's just
the truth is, I think I get where you're coming from. The truth is that those loans are available, but the commodity is not available.
If it's available, why don't I have it? Why don't you have it? Why do we only have 25% home ownership in Nigeria? Why do we only have 5% of the homes in Nigeria secured by a mortgage?
Well, I think with the latest information I had, the model they were operating before, that they are financing most of their own projects. I think it's no longer the status quo now, because from what I learned even recently with one circular that was sent, you can actually, for example, like those major cities you're talking about, if let's say you approach a property developer now and you have a house that you want to actually acquire, all you just need is to have an agreement, and then you submit it to that Federal Mortgage Bank, for example, like that's your own that you have a file open. So I think they will just check your inflow and I think spread it out to the number of years that you have left, and then they'll make a certain arrangement. You pay in a certain amount of percentage as initial payment, and then I think that they will process it. Unlike before, that they have to be a particular project owned by either that Federal Mortgage Bank or partner, or they have to have a kind of partnership with the developers before they can finance it. Now, even you and your friend can actually just make your deal and then you approach the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria, something like that. I didn't really pay attention, because most of their projects are actually not something I would advise anyone to, if not now that they are opening it up to the whole market in general.
Okay, I hear you. I hear you. Thanks for the input. I hear you. Let me get some other folks to stop in here and let's keep their own. I've got thanks so much, Engineer. I do appreciate you calling.
Thank you very much. My network is actually breaking.
Sorry about that. Emeka, hi. I've got the ATP Kenny. Emeka, how are you doing? Emeka, can you hear me? So you've got the floor. Go ahead. Let's see. Ekene, Mr. Ekene, I've got Ekene ATP Kenny. You've got the floor. Go ahead, sir.
Hello, good evening, Colin.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good. I hope I'm clear enough.
Yes.
So I don't know if it's okay.
Yeah, please go ahead.
All right. Addressing the issues of mortgage, a whole lot of times in Nigeria, why accessing mortgage is quite difficult boils down to the fact that they are not just enough affordable houses. And this is because there is very, very limited funding sources for the development of real estate. Now, many developed nations where mortgage is working, one of the reasons why it's working is because they have a functional.
Ekene, I think I lost you. Ekene, how you doing? I think I lost you. If you can. Okay, Ekene, I think I lost you. So if you can fix your audio, please come right back. But I heard you talk about funding. You're right. There's no funding, right? The funding in Nigeria for mortgage is very, very low. We've spoken about the CBN data point saying that only 5% of the homes in Nigeria are secured via a mortgage. I've also told you guys that for now, in my view, the only institution that gives you a long-term loan to buy a home is the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria. If a bank is giving you a loan of 5 years to buy a house, that's not a mortgage. That's not a mortgage. It just calls a mortgage, but it has to be long-term to buy that asset that's cost a lot of money, so that your monthly income is not just low, but you can also resell that mortgage, and then you create an industry where you are buying and selling and basically creating a refinance industry in the economy. That's what really I'm talking about, like the scalable part of it. And again, like I said, Emeka, let me see if you can speak. Emeka, Metsi RX, you've got the floor. Go ahead, Emeka.
Yeah, I can speak now.
Great, Emeka.
Thank you very much, Carlos.
Yeah, how you doing? Okay.
I hope everyone can hear me.
Let's try and see if we can. Emeka, so my thesis is this, right? If I was earning the same amount of money I earned in Nigeria, and I ended abroad, say I earned $1 million in Nigeria, and I went abroad in America, in say Florida, in Texas, I could buy a house. There's a pathway for me. I get a FHA loan, it's 30 years, I have a good credit score above 700%, 700 points. I pay my credits, my taxes. I have my down payment. In fact, FHA does not require any minimum income levels. There's even USDA, United States Department of Agriculture loans that have no down pay, right? There's a pathway for me there. But in Nigeria, I only see one pathway, and that's the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria. And my own personal experience, there are lots of folks looking for that loan. So it takes a long time to address all the requests. Emeka, can you help us out here?
Yeah, sure. So I mean, you're very correct when you're saying, let's not even get into what the different scenarios is outside the country. But I'll start by saying that in the course of my work, right, I interact with a lot of bankers, people that work at banks, and I'll just say there is zero appetite for them to give any loan above 10 years. And even that 10 years is sort of, they have to give loans, so they figure out the way. And for them, it's mainly because the Naira is very unpredictable. for the ones that have to raise money abroad to issue out mortgages, they raise money in USD, comes back here and they have to issue it out in Naira, obviously, and then the Naira loses its value within 5 to 10 years, and then they are scrambling to sort of pay back. So it's not attractive to them. The money they have as deposit that they're supposed to issue out, there's so many other relatively risk-free ways they can put that to work as opposed to giving you a mortgage. So that's one of the reasons why it just doesn't work. That system just doesn't work for us. So what we have in Nigeria and most of West Africa is a full-blown crisis. It's not a little thing, it's a major problem. According to the World Bank, the average mortgage qualification rate on this continent is about 5%, which is
5%.
Insane. It's about 5%. Yeah, that's average mortgage qualification rate. So what we try to say is we need to be creative about solving the problem. You're not going to get a 30-year mortgage from a commercial bank in Nigeria. That's just not going to happen yet. Federal Mortgage Bank offers those, but we've had this conversation that it's extremely difficult to get. Legally, every Nigerian above the age of 18 who has a source of income is entitled to get it at least once in their life. But even the average time for disbursement is about 9 months. In reality, it's actually closer to 24 months. So what we try to propose is alternative ways of solving the problem. So, for example, buying long lease properties, for example. In Lagos, it's becoming very popular to buy property or to lease the property for a 10-year period or a 15-year period. And then within that frame of mind, you're paying less than you would have been paying in rent for a comparable space. And then you can build up yourself so that you can then afford the kind of house you want to buy. I think another thing we've also realized is that for a lot of Nigerians, it's kind of cultural, right? We think about, on average, a Nigerian will live in 3-4 homes in their lifetime. In the US, people typically move every 10 years or so.
Yeah.
So when we talk to a Nigerian about buying a home, they're thinking, I'm buying my home. I'm buying the home that I'm going to live in with myself and my family.
That's a good point.
Building the home. We need to start thinking about it like, this is the home I can afford now. So let me live in this home for the next 10 years. And then the home will add value. The value in the home will increase. And in 10 years' time, I can sell it. And hopefully my economic situation will be better. And I can now go and buy the better home, that I really want. And then I guess something else which is not really pleasant to a lot of people is finding homes in non-conventional places. So if you live in Lagos, for example, you have to sort of bite the bullet and go to places like Ikotono, for example, where it's a bit cheaper. So you're talking about a pathway to securing a mortgage in Nigeria as of today. And I would say, yes, the easiest mortgage you can acquire is the Federal Mortgage Bank, NHF.
Mm-hmm.
However, you want to deal with what we have on ground. When you can do a space about potential ways of solving the problem, like creating a mortgage industry, and so we'll have that conversation then. But for now, I would say let's start thinking about it a bit more creatively. Like, okay, I'm buying the home I can afford now. Essentially buying long lease properties that you can afford in places like Yaba, Surulere. Those are the places where you see that those kinds of deals majorly. So I think that I just thinking about alternative ways around it rather than getting the 30-year mortgage because I honestly don't think it's going to happen anytime soon.
So, can I just be clear? Are you saying that I should go ahead and lease instead of buying?
I would say yes. Go ahead and lease.
So I think what people buy is because this idea of you're buying equity. If you hold Naira, inflation eats it. If I buy property, hopefully inflation goes up, my property price also goes up. I just why people are looking for the property as well. It's not just apart from, even the same thing in America, right? You buy the property, there's equity. You have that equity. I think that's what people are also looking for here. So that lease takes away that protection of inflation when you buy the property, right?
Yeah, so I completely agree with you, right? So there's something people don't think about when it comes to buying property. I think you sort of touched on it here, where you buy, for example, if you successfully get a mortgage for 30 years, you get it successfully for reasons, even if it's an NHF loan, and then you're paying it down, the equity is building, the value of the property is increasing, while your equity in the property is also increasing. So in 15 years' time, you wake up and you're like, hey, you know what, this property is now beneath me, I want something better. You can actually cash yourself out of that mortgage at that point, where you essentially receive the value of the equity you've put into the property plus any appreciation that the property has gained. So that's the thing. Well, I guess what we're talking about now is what is the realistic way that the Nigerian now can buy a home.
Yeah.
And while we're having that conversation, I did the math. Like I was like, okay, let me just do some quick math. 30% for 25% typically, which is what our partners typically ask for. 25% for 30 years. Down payment of 30%, it just cuts down the amount of people that can afford it down to maybe 5-10% of.
Can you say that again? So let's use me. Let's say I earn $1 million a month, right? And I want to buy property in say Lagos, right? So what would you need from me?
So you earn $1 million a month. You want to buy property where?
Let's just say Port Harcourt.
Okay, so not very familiar with Port Harcourt market, but let's say you're looking for a property in this.
What market are you familiar with? Choose Abuja, Lagos, choose anyone. That's fine. Just go ahead.
Okay, so let's say Lagos, you're looking at 50M, right? 50M is the price of the property. Right? So you approach telling them, let me not call any bank. You approach a bank, a commercial bank in Nigeria. You don't have access to any because you can't get that now. So you approach a commercial bank in Nigeria, ask them for a mortgage. The first thing they'll ask you to provide is 30% of the amount.
Okay.
So you need to provide 15M first, right? On top of the 15M, you need to provide an extra 2M for just services, all the things that we need to do. So let's say you need to have at least 17M with you in your pocket for them to even answer you. Now they will typically ask for around 25% interest rates.
Jesus,
on the property. You can negotiate because you're earning $1 million a month. It's good business for them. It's the best business they can get at that point. So maybe it goes down to 23, maybe. So the question would then be, would you be able to make your payments monthly or annually? So some advice we've gotten from larger financial minds is essentially proposing that you will pay annually and then taking the money monthly and then putting it into something. But there is also risk, right? Because what happens when you can't make those payments? When you can't make the payment, if something happens to the place you're putting the money away, right? So the long and short is, if you're looking to get a loan, a mortgage in Lagos, based on those terms you mentioned, you need to have 17M in your pocket. Your credit score, yes, credit score matters in Nigeria. They do check those things. Your credit score has to be good because what essentially the bank is checking for is your ability to pay them back and your willingness to pay. Your ability to pay is dependent on your they use your availability of the down payment to confirm your ability to pay, and then your credit score to see your willingness to pay. So those are the two things. You need to have a good credit score, and good credit score is typically anything above, I think, 450. 450 is not great, but anything above that. So yeah, that's it.
So folks listen to you, Emeka. You've just killed a lot of folks listening to you because you have to have 17 million to get a loan, not to pay back. Because this is a down pay, so that's not going to work for me or for many folks that are listening to us here, right? And this is my point, that there is no sustainable, institutional, or scalable path. Most folks that buy a home, either their company buys the land, then they get a cooperative loan, or they have a very, very good paid job. They're able to drop $70 million down. But the normal guy, if you earn $1 million a month in Nigeria, you are in the 1%. And we're saying in Nigeria that 1% guy cannot buy a home in Lagos. That's crazy. So before we talk about other countries, how other countries have done it, let me also get a hi to speak. So I've got Kaide. Idando Kanyako. How you doing, sir? Please go ahead and got the floor.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm very well.
It's very, very much an interesting conversation. So I live in the UK and I work for Barclay Homes. I am head of construction and regeneration, and I'm just sort of interested in some of these conversations because I've met a lot of Nigerians who are, sort of private equity guys who are sort of putting the money into your market and sort of looking for land here and so on. And one of the things I think is a big problem there is keep talking about creating this sort of access to financialization and market for a diaspora to invest. But what about the lower income earners? And we're talking about deposits itself. How high it is for an ordinary Nigerian to be able to raise that cash, to be able to go to the bank and get this loan. But my question to you guys is, how do we force sort of central government to be able to push the bank to innovate, lower interest rates, and also improve our data? How do we track sort of where does people live in terms of collateral? How do we increase people's wages so they be able to sustain these mortgages itself? And a lot of this issue we're discussing is all about risk for the banks itself. And their thinking is, I don't know who Mr. John is, and if I lend this money to Mr. John, will I get my money back? And how do we build that value system? And these are the questions perhaps someone else can answer here.
Yeah, I mean, great question. I would just say this. I was going to talk about how other countries have done it, but let's understand that when you want to build a mortgage, like you would know, right? When you want to build mortgages in a country, it goes beyond the homes, right? There's the refinance market. You've talked about the identification requirement to say if a guy walks into your office, do you know this is Kalu because it has a unique number, like maybe a social security number? You can track him so that you can collateralize him. You can say if Kalu goes somewhere else, he can't get a loan because he's already owing me. So let's see what Nigeria has done. Let's talk about the UK and the US. If I want to get a loan in the US or in the US, they would ask me for one, who are you? So they have my social. They know who I am.
We have a system here where it's that, because we have middle income earners in the UK, and we have a very good, well-paid jobs, and there is a sort of undulation in our job market. We know these jobs these jobs are stable, and where in Nigeria, there's a lot of political risk.
But we're talking about a $1 million guy. We're talking about a guy that earns $1 million a month in Nigeria. That's a 1% guy. That's a 1% guy right there. That guy.
Exactly. But I'm saying is this is a solution for government to get.
Let's talk about South Africa. Let's talk about what South Africa did. When South Africa got independence, right? Not independence, when Mandela and the ANC took over, they had a lot of poor black and they had a lot of rich black. So they had this, like we're talking about, very, very rich upper class blacks, but very, very poor blacks that had no home. Soweto, when you hear Soweto, I thought Soweto was a place till I went there. Soweto would just be Southwest Township. It's a shanty town where the cooks and the gardeners used to live, because according to apartheid laws, you could not live in the city after 6 o'clock. So they would go out of the city, live in shanty town. But what they did in South Africa was to take affordable housing as a human right, and essentially said, we are going to give you a tax credit. So if you're going to build multi-million dollar homes, you have to build homes, affordable homes. Then the government of South Africa themselves, they had this reconstruction development plan. They built 2.3 million homes in 13 years. That's about 175,000 homes a year. And one way they did it was to say, we're not building homes to make money. We're building homes to give South Africans a home. So there was a lot of subsidy in building materials, in getting these homes, 1-2 bedroom homes to people, so that people can have a home, have equity. If you come to, why I'm making this point, if you come to Nigeria, there's this idea that government will build a home, then sell the home, then make a profit, then build new homes. That model can't work because there are too many people that need homes and they can't afford it. We can't turn that wheel fast enough to build a home, sell to a guy, the guy pays back. It doesn't. In UK, in the UK, council flats. They are council flats,
So, but this is all about us paying our taxes, how is government subsidizing how they allocate resources. So, I'm a socialist. I believe that if we're paying taxes, we should be seeing some sort of we should be benefit from it. So with Syria, with South Africa, with Nigeria, you guys don't have an issue with revenue. You guys have a spending issue.
I agree completely.
If government just sort of step back for a second and say, okay, well, let's prioritize the real estate or affordable housing market. Let's see how much we can put aside and build for lower income earners, and not much so focused about the 1%, because the 1% would get access to financialization anyway, because they have the capital.
But they don't. That's the point. That the 1% don't. So I'm going extreme to say that even the 1% in Nigeria do not get a mortgage. That's the point I'm making. Let me give you a number. Fine, I'm going to go to Kaiden now to kind of speak. Let me give you a number. If homes in Nigeria cost 5 million naira to build, let's say 5 million to build maybe a bungalow or a carcass, right? If Nigeria built 250,000 homes in a year, do you know how much it will cost us? 1.25 trillion. 1.25 trillion. The Central Bank of Nigeria has printed about 13 trillion for the federal government to do. I'm not sure what it is to do. So you ask yourself, that 113 trillion, why didn't they take that money, build homes, hire people to build them? So you are creating jobs, you are creating a boom in building materials, you are employing people, giving people homes, equity. Why don't we translate that printing to build homes? 1.25 trillion gets you 250,000 homes. If those homes are going to cost 5 million, even if you just build the foundation and it's 5 million, you have 250,000 homes a year. So going back to your point, I say this all the time, it's not a revenue problem. It's really a spending problem. We're spending money on internet and the airport. We don't have homes to live in when we leave the airport. So Kaide, hang in there. Let me get Kaide to speak. But you just hang in there. You're in Emeka. Kaide, hi. Thanks for waiting. I got Emma K. Praise. How are you doing, sir? Thanks for holding on there. What's on your mind? Kaide, can you hear me? All right, Kaide is going to come back to us. So Olumide is here. This whole topic actually started because I and Olumide were going back and forth on Twitter about US and the UK market. So I really would like Olumide to come on and, just to give me, the facts are the facts. The facts are that the 1% Nigerian guy, the 1% guy in Nigeria cannot get a mortgage. And unless we fix that, unless we fix credit, unless we fix real finance market whereby the banks are able to give a loan and can immediately turn around and sell that loan to a company that can buy those loans and take the loans off the bank's balance sheet, thereby immediately allowing the banks to issue more and more loans. We're not going to dent this housing deficit. It's not going to go away. Emeka, I mean, can we talk more about the refinance side of Nigeria, Emeka? I know I know there's a Nigerian Refinance Corporation, right? How is it doing?
Yeah.
A while back, they were struggling with recapitalization. That company is the pivot or the fulcrum. If there is no refinance guy in Nigeria, we cannot get affordable homes. Can you speak on that?
Yes. So first of all, I will start by saying I agree with you that the government needs to take affordable housing not as a money-making activity, but essentially as a human right, but also as sort of like an economic stimulator, simply because there's also other fringe benefits or even solid benefits you get from providing housing to people, or at least creating a society where there is a very clear pathway to owning your own home. So that's fine. And yes, I'm also going to speak to the fact that one of the key missing piece is how difficult it is to refinance loans, mortgage loans specifically in Nigeria. So in the US, for example, they have all the mechanisms in place that ensures that basically most mortgages are risk-free to the banks. So there'll always be, as long as you issue out a mortgage properly and you underwrite it properly, the government is willing to be a buyer of last resort of the product when the time comes. So that's fine. And you're right that the financing company in Nigeria is a bit, it's a weird situation for them because yes, the last time I did hear about them, they were having issues. But I will look for the number while we're speaking, but it's not encouraging. The numbers around the number of loans that you've been able to buy from the commercial banks is not encouraging at all. So the commercial banks themselves have no incentive to really go in on providing the mortgages. So last I heard, they are buying maybe just 10% of the mortgages that commercial banks are issuing. So it's not really good business for the commercial banks. But I wanted to speak to a company, I can't remember their name right now, but they are based out of, it's an American company. So I think American Building Society or so. They are based out of Liberia, but they have operations in Ghana and Sierra Leone, last I checked. So they have this going on in a very small ecosystem. So what they do is they raise money from diasporans in the US and Canada, and then they take that money, bring it back to Liberia and Ghana. They're trying to get into Nigeria now, but that's not been done yet. They use the money to then build locally. They also provide those loans to local developers. Then, when the houses are built and the buyers are beginning to pay back, they then repackage those loans and then sell them back on the US market, either as a bond or essentially they just sell the loans as a mortgage-backed security to investors in the US. And then when you're paying back your mortgage, you're essentially paying back the money to a long-term investor in the US. It's a very new company. I spoke to the CEO about it. He just mentioned that
what's the name?
Coming to Nigeria.
What's the name of the company? Just in case.
While the call is going on, I'll literally pull it up and get it for you because I know they have two names. They have their development company separate from the actual financing company.
Gotcha.
But the point is, we're Nigerians. We know that the government is not going to be doing this anytime soon. So maybe we look into potentially, or any private enterprise can think about doing something similar. There's been a lot of stories recently of diasporans who send their money back here and then somebody takes it from them, right?
Yeah.
What if you know that they are good for the money? They are working in whatever job they are doing over there. They are good for the money. You know, they are earning good money over there. They are sending it back here. Why can't they acquire their homes through this system, and then the loans are then repackaged and sold as mortgage-backed securities? Now, the downside of it is that these loans are issued in USD. So yeah, that's going to be a problem. But for now, that's typically what obtains. So yeah, you're right that the missing piece is that refinancing aspect.
Gotcha.
Banks are not going to hold your loan for 30 years. It doesn't just make sense.
Doesn't make that was just sort of clear.
So before I have the one, just mention that you did say that I broke people's heart. So when we're done with move over, I'll be happy to explain the alternative path to home ownership for that 1 million naira.
Go ahead. Go ahead and explain now. Is that an alternative path to if I don't have 17 million and what's the alternative path?
Yes. So and that's what we do, right?
Who is we?
My company. So what we do is we provide college students here. Now what we do is we create saving circles. We're saving on a very very small scale, just because we're testing the concept out. But we create saving circles where you who earns 1 million, you probably have other friends who earn around that.
So Emeka, I just pause you there. So Emeka, so just quick pause, right? So you guys are, if you're collecting money, you have to be like SEC guy. I get what you're saying, but I don't want people to get if you're registered, I'll let you continue.
Sure.
Yeah, okay. But I mean, I hear you, circles to pull funds together, crowdfunding. Exactly. I hear you. That's a model.
No, not to crowdfund. Sorry, not to crowdfund. So you, Carlo, and your 10 other friends who earn like that, you all give sort of like susu, but for your down payment, right? So you the people you're not collecting money from strangers. Everybody contributes money. You take it this month and pay for your down payment, and then the contribution continues like that until everybody has paid everybody's down payment. Basically, that's what I'm trying to say. Not crowdfunding at all.
Okay, so this is more like you guys contribute money for the 17. That's 17 million. You guys contribute like a susu to pay for the down pay. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly.
That's a good idea. I mean, folks do that informally. So there are lots of ideas of how folks pay for mortgage informally. Yeah, but I commend that, and I think folks should also jump on family, friends, arrangements, organizations, companies, jump on all that. But the scalable institutional part is really where I would like us to focus on. I'm not saying you shouldn't give us this is a great idea, but just so we want to prod people to listen to us and say we have to create a pathway. There has to be a pathway for a high earner with good credit to get a loan to buy a home in Nigeria. I think it's just that simple to do, right? Let me get Tokwe. Tokwe has been hanging out. So Tokwe, you've got Tokwe Olawoba. Sorry, sir. Go ahead. Tokwe by Doctor. Tokwe, you've got the floor going once. All right, sir. Let me get first Bright Ibitoye. Good day, sir. Go ahead.
How are you guys?
Hey, Bright, your audio is not that great, but it's good.
Yes, the good one, actually, Nigeria. I have said this, I think maybe it was in your platform. I think government still have to do a lot in this.
Yeah, first, like your audio is really, I really want to hear what you're saying. Your audio is very bad. If you could help me out, sir, I just do a hands up when you fix it. I'll just put you back on.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Go ahead.
Yes. So my suggestion is it's still gonna be government, because honestly, what we're doing in Nigeria, we're still playing with mortgage. We're still playing with housing sector generally. The last time I checked, we're still throwing around figures, saying 17 million housing deficit. But for me, I think it's more than that. Apart from being more than that, are we building the kind of houses that people want to put their money and buy? The answer is no. Because if you check the level of what people earn in Nigeria, perhaps let's say you have majority of people earning between 200 to 1 million. And these are really the target. If I were government, I think it's right time we liberalize that sector. the bureaucracy with Federal Mortgage Bank is such a huge thing that Federal Mortgage Bank is just sitting there with I would say this, I would say maybe, I don't know the word to use for it. Because if I had to say the thing that is in my mind, it might not go down well with people. But this is what I think. I think that Federal Mortgage Bank needs to be liberated. I think it was El-Rufai or Sanusi that said something about liberalizing that Federal Mortgage Bank, make it a private entity. And in a real sense that I agree with them. Let's look at it for instance. If only 10 million Nigerians that are working, that are earning about 1 million a month, could get a house in the range of 20 to 30 million to pay for 20 years, meaning that their monthly payment would, because if government decide to say we're going to drop out, let's say we drop 1 trillion naira. 1 trillion naira into all the commercial banks, issue out a loan to each of the citizens at 6%, add 1% to be your own excess other charges. So meaning that gap, the government drop 1 trillion naira, it means that there is fund there. So all they need to do now, because one of the things I find ridiculous, I processed federal mortgage loan. I processed it since like a year and a half. I've gotten the approval. I've been waiting for disbursement now for almost 6 months for disbursement of 15 million naira. It takes me 1.5 years to process it. I'm going to pay back in 15 years at 6% interest rate. Now, this is the point. I only got a 3-bedroom apartment for that amount, right? I'm still going to pay 3 million to get it 18 million, right? But look at it this way. If imagine government give the banks, the commercial banks, let's say the 25 banks have 1 trillion naira. Let people who earn legitimate money, who can pay between 100 and 200,000 naira a month as a repayment, get a loan at a 7% or maximum 8% per annum. Get the house, and then in that case, it means that developer will not have issues with fund. And then, for instance, each government, state government, federal government, where they have land, because the major issues of this housing thing is land. Because the truth is that we tried to purchase the land last year, a 4.5 hectare land somewhere in Life Cap at 1.6 billion naira. So if I pay 1.6 billion naira to buy a land, and I'm going to build a terrace house, about 120, about 130 of them there, how much am I going to sell each of those houses to get back my 1.6 billion, including the profit?
It becomes unprofitable, right?
Pardon?
It becomes unprofitable. The project itself can't pay itself, yeah.
Yes, it becomes unprofitable. That's the point. We got some guys from South Africa, they're willing to buy the land, but we couldn't get land directly from government, because if the land comes directly from government, they are willing to give you money, they are willing to give you whatever amount you need to build it. So the problem here is, if government can reduce that bureaucracy, you need to bring people, before you will be giving those lands, you must show proof of funds. If you show proof of funds, so meaning that the land comes directly from federal government. I give you a simple example. I don't know if any of you remember a project that was done under Jonathan. It's between Nigerian Labour Congress and a certain foreign developer called Christian Lally. The government gave those guys 450 hectares of land somewhere in Napo, another 550 hectares of land on Airport Road. Now, because government gives you 2 lands, a duplex of 5 bedroom was going for 18 million. A bungalow was going for 8 million. 3 bedroom, 2 bedroom was going for 6 million. Because the land that ought to be the issue, government has taken care of it, and the interest rate was 2.5%. But guess what? This same thing was messed up by Nigerian Labour Congress. This same thing was messed up by FCDA, because as soon as they see that those people have money, they come up with all manner of government bureaucracy. People, about 3,200 people contribute money, 10% down payment. I'm talking of the money they had in bank that time, as a contribution was about 3.8 billion naira. But guess what? They came up, first Labour Congress said they want some payment up front, then chairman, they mess the whole thing up. And these are processes that need to be fixed. If these bureaucracies are not fixed, Nigerians will not get foreign investment in terms of housing. What we will be getting is people that had money, that have $2 million, that will buy a land for 500 million or 1 billion, and they want to sell each of those flats at 150 million naira. That's what we are doing now. And we're just scratching the surface. For me, that sector alone, if I do not exaggerate, we have about $350 billion sitting there, haven't tapped at all. Mr. Kalu, you know what I'm saying. So we need to first deal with this bureaucracy. How do we do it? It's going to be government. Government has to streamline giving land to people that have money to build. I'm not talking just like we do when we give out our oil blocks, when we give out all this concession. You need to have money for you to be able to do it. So we're able to sort out that. We'll get direct foreign investment in billions. I am very sure of that.
But I hear you.
Thank you. I'll yield for now.
I hear you. But I think just so that we understand, right? We have to, the very, very basics are missing. If you hear what Emeka is saying and also what the gentleman from the UK is saying, and this Kanyako, the very basics are missing in Nigeria. We now have credit scoring. Excellent. The problem is this, right? When you go to get a loan in the bank, if you get that loan from a bank, the bank cannot give you a loan because deposits are saying they want to put their money in the bank for 3 months, 1 year max. So where's the bank going to get the long-term money to give you? That's the first thing. So what banks do is that they give you a loan, package that loan, and sell to a refinance company. We don't have that really working yet.
No, but let me answer that, Mr. Kalu. That's why I say government. That's why I said government needs to drop 1 trillion naira into the commercial banks. This is what Obasanjo did when they were selling those government houses. They gave out the loans, they gave out money to the banks for the banks to issue out the loans in a certain rate, which allows the civil servants who cannot afford to deposit those huge amounts of money to buy those government houses. It was done before through El-Rufai and the rest of them in Abuja here. That's how they sold all the government houses. The interest was 5%.
Yes.
Because the federal government have given the bank the money to be able to give that long-time loan.
I hear you. But
do you understand?
I hear you. But see the difference, right? And in Abuja, the homes were existing. So what they did with Federal Mortgage Bank, they gave them 100 billion. Then there was a mortgage-backed security. So they already had existing homes. So what Federal Mortgage Bank did was to give you a loan to buy a house that was collateralized by the house you were buying. So that was a bit easier. That was a mortgage-backed security. In Nigeria's case, if you go to Lagos now, right, or to any other city, there are no homes there. So the challenge is to say we want to raise funds from the private sector to then build long-term infrastructure, i.e. build out a home for the long-term, 30-year loans. The problem now is this: the banks have trillions of naira in their vaults, but they cannot take that trillion, right, and invest for a long term because the depositors have not invested in a long-term product with the bank. So what the bank in Nigeria is a refinance company that will say, go ahead, bank. The government can say, if you create a mortgage for a low-income earner, let's say if you build a home and that home is priced at below 15 million, and you can offer that borrower that loan for 20 years, the government can say, we, government, will buy that loan from you. What have you instantly done? You've instantly converted all the banks in Nigeria. They will start to look for good borrowers because they know if they give you a home worth 15 million for 20 years, that the central bank or the bank, whoever it is, will buy that loan from them, give them back their money with little profit. What will developers now start to do? The developers will know that once they have a house on the market that is priced at below 15 million, that the banks will buy it from them. What will Dangote Cement, what will all those WAPCO Cement do? They will know that the developers have a market for homes at 15 million. So if they give cement to those developers on credit and the developer can build a home below 15 million, the developer would sell and they get paid within the time of sale. So you are creating a back channel that everyone in the system, the value chain, knows that because there's going to be an ultimate buyer, I'm not waiting for the actual buyer itself, i.e. the retail buyer, but there's an ultimate buyer in the market. In America, it's Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, all those guys. They ultimately would buy the mortgage from you, right? So if I create a mortgage, now the Pencom has said you can use 25% of your deposits to pay for a down payment. That's 25% right there. If I bring in under 25%, and the developer, like you have said, can get land at a very, very subsidized price, and the developer knows that if he builds that house, and that house can be sold at 15 million to a 20-year-old loan borrower, if he knows that, then he can sell his loan immediately the next day. You automatically create more and more units coming to the market at that price. Let the rich guys take care of themselves, but focus, like my friend in the UK has said, focus on the lower bottom of the pyramid. Go after the low income affordable home buyers. In many ways, you can say in South Africa that if you build a home, you can get a tax credit and say you're going to get, if you build low income homes, you get a tax credit. So you can avoid paying taxes on a housing project if you're able to show that you've taken some money and you build low income housing. It doesn't have to be in the same place. So there are many ideas. In Kenya, you can go and form a cooperative. You go to the government and they give you the building materials at subsidized prices. So you guys build yourself. They give you the cement, the iron rods, you guys build it yourself. So a company can go, you can be 50, you get the land, and the government will pay Dangote to give you very subsidized building materials. So lots of ideas exist out there. And this is why I'm worried that Nigeria, the largest economy in Africa, 200 million people, we now have about 10 trillion, about $13 billion in long-term pension assets. But somehow we are unable to convert all that money to fund affordable housing in Nigeria. This is my worry. And again, like I said, if you earn 1 million naira in Nigeria, you're 1%. And if you can't buy a house in Nigeria with 1 million naira a month, then who can buy a house in Nigeria? You know, it's funny. Wale, hi,
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Yeah,
Wale.
hi, good evening, everyone. I live in the UK, and there's a scheme where we call it Help to Buy, which the government basically helps new property or new aspiring people to basically get property ladder. So in Nigeria, I don't think we have anything like that. So what happened is that there are two problems here. We have a problem with people getting the required equity to buy into a house, and we also have a problem with pricing. So as a scheme within the UK, which could also work in Nigeria, if someone is going to buy a house for the very first time, that person must never have owned a house before. If you contribute 5%, government can also contribute 20% to make 25% equity. And that would then form your part of the deposit into the house, and you have the time to pay back. Then rather than you, also when you sign up a loan, a mortgage agreement with a developer or a lender, even if it's a 30 years time, there's always a fixed period where you can then decide to refinance. That means that there is that flexibility and liquidity that can move around the market. So we don't necessarily have to then tie someone down to a 30-year deal with a lender at a bad rate. So after 2 years, you can basically say, I don't want this lender again. I want to go to another lender without paying any penalty or any early payment interest. So I think we need to kind of find a way to balance at least to get property market at a good price without inflating it by people basically masking or using their cousins or friends to buy as much as they can and technically inflating the market. And also we need to find a way to then refinance that market itself, because money needs to move around. So if you're tired of a deal, you can move to the next one. And we should allow people who probably are high net worth individuals, private equity companies, to also participate in that market. And I feel with that we can bring in more liquidity and as well let people to get a property ladder with less deposit.
I agree. I mean, those are good ideas, right? Just to that, we're back to refinance, we're back to subsidies, right? We're back to the government playing a unique role, and that's what we need to really do, really, in Nigeria. It just can't be that if the private sector alone can't do it. There's nowhere in the world where the private sector alone has delivered homes. It has got to be the government coming to subsidize. Singapore, let me give you the example of Singapore. Singapore built about 686,000 homes in 33 years. They're building about 20,814 homes a year. These are four-bedroom flats. Four-bedroom flats, quality homes. They build them like council flat, but they are quality. They don't. When they were building these homes, man, they didn't have the money that we had. Nigeria had more money than Singapore in the 70s, even in the early 80s, but they focused on giving their citizens a home. That's what they focused on, and they've done it. Again, I go back to we need just 1.25 trillion to build 250,000 homes valued at maybe 5 billion naira. Even if you say you are going to give Nigerians plots of land worth 5 million, that's a good spend of 1.25 trillion. So you go back to this idea of, are we really spending the money right? I mean, we spent 10 billion to buy fire trucks. I agree, it's safety, but really, are we really getting the bang for our money? If you build a home, you employ 8 to 10 Nigerians. That's consumption right there. That's job creation. You buy nails, you buy aluminium, you buy the cement, you buy paint. You are creating consumption in the economy. So you are boosting the GDP, you are building a home, you are boosting financing, insurance, banking, all that is all, even the woman selling food to the workers, you are giving her a job indirectly. Don't we think like that? What is so hard in doing that way? I don't know why.
Then another thing I was going to say is that there are also infrastructure that supports a mortgage or a loan-backed economy. So, for example, things like ability to search people's asset base and find out who owns what and when they bought it and what they bought it at. There you get. So we can't technically have a fluid market without favor and favoritism, or how you want to call it, without having transparency. So we need to put all those things also in place, and we have to find a way to kind of get approval rights in terms of processes. If a developer wants to build, how long does it take them, what they need to bring? There should be a level of transparency in terms of things they need to put in place and how quickly we can turn around things. Also, if you buy a house, how quickly can we perfect document? How quickly can we confirm ownership titles?
True.
Without getting into the problems of money layers and all that stuff, because these are realities and these are hindrances and risks that lenders will look at anyway. And without these things being addressed fundamentally in terms of how we look after the titles, the history behind land, verification and things like that. In the digital world, these things are already existing. We just need to take the willpower to invest our time in making sure things are done properly. And if there's a market for it, people would naturally gravitate towards that and bring that money towards things like this.
And I mean, if anyone is listening, and you are close to government, it's a good idea I'm going to give you for business, right? Abroad, they have what they call title companies. And what a title company does is it goes between the buyer and the seller. So imagine you are in Lagos and you have links to the government. Go form a title company, right? So if I want to buy land, I basically pay to you. You verify all the title from the owner of the land. So those guys that have the omonile, the title, the owners of the land, they give you their title. I pay you. You guarantee me that title is complete. You process all that. I sign. You give an insurance bond, and if anything happens, you can give back my money. So it's a very, very good, easy business for you because you're just doing what Alausa is doing, but you're not even doing the government side. You are simply doing the title side, and that's how we all buy homes. Outside Nigeria, you go through a title company. They do the certification. They go to the land registry, they register it, they verify that the owners that have the land are the ones selling to you. They sign for you and all that. So great idea. You can create land titles and run it, and the government will basically pay you, or you do it yourself, and the buyers will pay you. So it's a good business for you folks that have connections with the government to get in front of them and say, just Google Chicago title or whatever title, copy it, take to Alausa, get them to sign for you. It's very, very good business for you. Let me get Tunji. Hey, Tunji, how you doing?
Yeah, good evening.
Tunji, what's up, man?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, Tunji, you're loud and clear. Go for it.
Yeah. So, good evening, everybody. I've been listening to everybody's views on this matter, and I've heard a lot of really nice stuff and smart stuff. So, the problem with this mortgage stuff in Nigeria is really critical, and I think it's not something we can leave only for the government to handle. We need to solve it in a very, very distinct way. I think with the rise of technology, I think it should be able to help. I think just like the way the financial technology sector broke out in Nigeria, I think we can also have something like mortgage technology, property technology kind of thing that can help people also kind of raise funds for getting a home. You get me? I think Emeka was saying something about crowdfunding. I don't know, my network was kind of going off here. I don't know if if there can be a model whereby, okay, you earn 1 million, I earn 1 million, 100 people earn 1 million. There can be a model whereby, okay, we can verify these people who earn 1 million, bring them together, maybe in 10 sets, try to gather their money, then use it to maybe build, and they all share the house in units or something like that, just to make it easier for everybody to have a slice of a home in Nigeria. I don't know if you get what I'm saying.
Correct. And Tunji, lots of those guys exist. I've actually interviewed one of them on my space. Let me give you a name, right? So Google Prop Crowdy, PROPCROWDY, Prop Crowdy. So they are licensed by SEC. So they are at the top end. They are SEC licensed. They are a marketplace. So the way they are supposed to work is that if you're a developer, you list your home, or you can raise money. It's like a stock exchange for developers. So you can say, I want to build a house. You go there. So Prop Crowdy is SEC registered. They are at one end of the spectrum, right? I've also talked to some guys that the problem is this, right? To raise money in Nigeria, to take money from people, to advertise and take money from people, you need a SEC license. I know people do this informally. There are lots of WhatsApp groups, there are lots of little apps that you can go and do what Emeka is saying. People do it informally, it works sometimes. So it's because people are afraid of what happens in the scam. Okay, what happens if the building is no longer built? How do you settle all that? So nobody wants to advertise for anyone, but it works. Like you said, if you have technology, you can create a cycle, lots of there are savings cycle. Let me do a shout out. They're like Cowrywise, for instance, right? They do cycles. You can, if you have 3 or 4 friends, you can go there and create a cycle and say the cycle is to invest in a house in Yaba. You guys can hire an architect. You guys can build it, renovate it, and it's yours. So all of you own it. You can create a company. It's possible. Nothing is impossible here. And you can get around, the stringent or expensive requirements of SEC if you know yourself. I think it starts to get difficult if you don't know yourselves and you are bringing in third parties. That's where SEC comes in. That's where people like Prop Crowd come in. So it's a formal platform, but it's a good idea. I mean, for me, anything you can do, guys. Why are we even talking about housing? Let's even go explain to people why we're talking about housing. The pathway to wealth is through a house. The pathway to wealth is through a house. In Nigeria, I'll clarify that statement for you, right? In America, if you own a home, it is possible to get a loan on the equity of that home, and it's for 30 years. So you see a lot of Nigerians that you see coming back home to invest and live abroad. They bought a house at $100,000. Their house appreciated to $200,000. They are still owing a mortgage, but they can borrow on the appreciation of that home. They come to Nigeria, they buy land in Lekki or build something in Lekki, and that house in Lekki, believe it or not, is paying their mortgage in the US, because the land in Lekki appreciates faster than the land in, say, Texas, right? So they're using the Nigeria to pay their mortgage, but they can only do that because they can borrow off the equity of their homes abroad. In Nigeria, if you have a 1 billion naira home in Lekki, there are very, very few things you can do with it. You can go to a bank and borrow money, but it's very expensive because the bank has to do what's called an equitable mortgage. It has to transfer title from you to the bank. And in the laws of Nigeria, it's assumed that you are selling that house, so you pay sort of taxes. It's not as easy in America. So if I own a $1 billion home in Lekki, it's just sitting there. It's called dead capital. I've taken 1 billion, I've locked it up in Lekki. What's the rent in Lekki? Let's assume you hammer and you get a guy that's going to pay you 100 million naira for that house in Lekki, which is nearly impossible. That's 10%. So even that money you think you're making is less than the money you would make if you took that same money and you bought treasury bills without the wahala of taxes, right? The point I'm making, real estate in Nigeria, the yield is not that high. But what it does is that the value tends to hold itself over inflation if you have a good location for a home in Nigeria. So the dead capital issue goes back to Land Use Act. Because all of us in Nigeria, if you're a Nigerian, listen to this space, you don't own your land. All of us are all leasing land from the federal government. If you look at your CFO, you are leasing from the federal government or state government that owns the land. What's going to happen when those leases run out, we will know pretty soon. But we're all leasing, which means that if you are leasing, do you really own that land? Not really. The government owns the land. You are borrowing the land from the government to build your home. So the bank that's where the problem is, dead capital. But if you change the Land Use Act and you said, that land is owned by me now, it's freehold owned by me, that means I can go to a bank because it's owned by me, the same way I give the bank my car as collateral. And it's easy. Let's make it easy. If I had a share certificate and I want to borrow money, what do? I go to the stock exchange, I give it to my broker or to my bank. My bank gives me a loan. The bank does not go to the governor of any state to sign that share certificate. So look at it this way. If I have a share certificate worth 1 billion, I can walk into a bank, give them that certificate as collateral, they give me a loan. They don't go to governor. But if I have the same land worth 1 billion, I can't do that. They have to go to the governor to sign legal equitable mortgage, blah, 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 able to buy a house. Same 1 billion. So it's easier to buy that share because it's more liquid than land. That's under wahala, you see. So the pathway to wealth is via equity in America. In Nigeria, I think the pathway to preserving your wealth is through real estate. So you have to have real estate in your portfolio just to protect yourself from this fall of the naira. What is 20% inflation? What keeps your money up in Nigeria? Is it naira? No. Even stocks, what do stocks pay you? Do they pay you 20%? I don't think so. Do banks pay you 20%? I don't think so. The only asset class in Nigeria that you can maybe argue in some locations, not all locations, in some locations could rise 20% could be property in some area, right? Not all areas. Because dollar, if you hold dollar, it doesn't pay you any return. It simply holds your money from due to inflation. So problems all around, right? Problems all around. To the last words, let me get real estate to speak. Real estate bond.
I think I'm good. All I just have to say is that I think at the end of the day, the government still has to help in one way or the other. I think, like you just mentioned, this Land Use Act, they need to make it more flexible.
True.
Like, so things can work better. These tech companies, they need to support them better. I know that the long process of getting certified by SEC, you still have to settle this person, settle this person, settle this person. How do we move forward from here? So that's all I have to say.
Super. No worries.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
It's a nice space you have here.
I appreciate that, Sir. Real estate bond. What's happening, sir? James Bond, but in real estate. What's happening, sir?
All right, sir. I just wanted to speak on the idea you shared, about setting up a company to verify title.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, I won't encourage anybody to try that because that's a very dangerous business. You're ready to vote like every 2 days, because the whole system is very murky. So it's not as straightforward as it seems.
Well, let's get serious. Let's get serious. Okay. Why is it difficult? If I have a CFO of a title in Surulere, and if I want to buy a house in Surulere, I'll tell you to break CFO, Abi. You go and break CFO, and I'm dealing with you, the seller. Why? If I have a copy that says, "Seller, bring your CFO to me. Buyer, give me your money," I go to Alausa, I verify, I stamp it, and I give you. What's really the risk there?
Let me give you an example. One of my uncle's friends, also a developer. He has been developing for about 7 years, right? So his experience is not a novice. He bought this land, got us consent, had all these titles. They went to start working on site. Somebody came to stop him, that the land belongs to him. That one brought his own got lost consent.
Wow.
For the same land. Both of them are currently in court. Do you understand? So there's a lot of fraud, a lot of rubbish happening in the real estate industry, especially in terms of land. So it's not something you just ignorantly dabble into.
I hear you.
And it will come with a lot of cost, which I feel people won't be ready to pay for. You understand? Because you're going to have to do a lot of lawyers, surveyors, and I don't think people, it will be worth it at the end of the day. That's my own personal opinion. Anybody can try, but just to sound a note of knowledge. That's not as straightforward as it seems.
Okay, let me also take you on this. Before I let you speak, right? Do you know it is possible, right? Just imagine Lagos State now. Let's just use Lagos for example. You can fly a plane over Lagos, right, and take the picture of Lagos. Then you can digitally map all the plots and all the houses in Lagos digitally, right? And you give those plots numbers. Then those numbers, you put those numbers on the blockchain, which means those become unique, right? Like an NFT. You can't duplicate those C of O's. They're now digital and NFT. So if I want to buy land in Lagos, government can just simply say, okay, what's NFT, or is it Lekki 212? And that Lekki 212 is what you're buying because nobody else can duplicate it. It's on the blockchain. You can't fake it, right? This is the technology we're talking about, Abi. I'm not saying they should. Why can't they do something like that? Because that solves the problem. Because you can't sell the plot of land twice because it's a non-fungible token, a government non-fungible token representing landed interest on a blockchain. The same way it happens in the States here. They don't do NFT, but their title office is on point. But for Nigeria, where we have issues with titling, like you rightly said, you are very correct. Why can't we bring in technology and say we're going to convert CFO to blockchain? The CFO is still there. I'm not saying you cancel CFO. I'm saying put the CFO on the blockchain so that way it can't be duplicated. What is difficult in that? Is it rocket science for real estate?
I mean, it's meant to be straightforward, and this is something probably that can come up, some people can gather and work on it in the coming years. But I'm talking about the reality of ground.
Oh, no.
And also, yes, the current realities, and it's not just about ownership or the authenticity of the CFO. This land, you also have the family issue, involved in it. So even if you have the right CFO, you have to start involving, make sure that every member of the family is involved in selling that land. If not, you have issues or you have to pay for the land twice. There are just so many, like I can give the examples upon examples. So when you just said it just kind of shut alarm bells in my head, but I mean, somebody can take it up and it might work for them.
Let me also ask you, so Oyo State, right? Shout out to Oyo State. Oyo State has something called OYHOC, right? So it's digitized certificate of occupancy. They have this Oyo State Homeowners Charter Scheme. So it's like they digitize their CFOs. I'm not sure if it's still working. If anybody here is from Oyo State, this is what I've just told you now. Oyo State is doing it, or they did it. I'm not sure if it's still working. I would like to know if it is. If it is, shout out to them. The point I'm making is this, right? Why do we have all these spaces? We have all these spaces so that we can talk ideas. People come here and listen. And most folks that listen here could be policymakers, or they could be friends, or they could be married to a policymaker. So when I say all of these things, I'm actually on purpose trying to give information out. So people can say, Mr. Governor, you've just won election. Let's do this. Mr. Governor, let's do this. That's really where I'm going to. So I didn't let you speak. Did you have something you wanted to share, or before we conclude on this, did you want to share something specific?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
So I just want to contribute from the angle of someone that has actually gone ahead to acquire a property in Lagos, and what my eyes and my brother eyes faced. So This we could as much as possible think about how to innovate, use technology, use the people that we are dealing with. I want to believe nobody has mentioned Obas. Nobody has mentioned guides. After being like,
Schreiber.
Okay, go ahead.
I think if we ask for bad stories, we can go on for 10 years.
Okay,
Everybody has a bad story. So I hear what you are saying is a reality. Like you are saying reality. But I am saying, can we not change this reality? You know, few years ago, we didn't have phones in Nigeria. A few years ago, now we're talking on the space with phones. So can't we change this reality of monile, of fake CFO, of overpayment? We have to change it now because we are saying tribal.
So my contribution to that would be that you remember there's this documentary, Wolf of Wall Street. No, not Wolf of Wall Street. Men Who Built America. And require like billionaires to come together to allow a certain president to win because they need to do a favor them.
Yeah,
that is the only way this can work out. Probably in Ministry of Housing, you find a way to plant somebody there. Then maybe a young person, you lobby around, they'll probably package a policy for him to work with. You come through for him in terms of extra hands. For him to just work freely. That is the only way. The people that we are dealing with, they don't want technology. Immediately you buy a land, they just see you as a bag of money.
Yeah, right.
They just want to collect money. So I'm just really emotional on this. So I believe on the Oyo State store, the innovation part of the property acquisition, I heard something also too, but I don't know if it's still on. So
can you find out, Tribal? I mean, thank you. Thanks so much. Let me do real quick. Who knows about, if you know about the Oyo State thing, just hop in. If you know about the Oyo thing, America, your hands are up, Wale, your hands are up. Do you guys know about this Oyo State thing? Does it still work?
I heard about it, but for now, maybe I need to just do my diggings.
Okay, no worries. Let me ask Khadija. So America,
Lagos State, I actually attended the conference early this year where the deputy governor talked about digitizing the land bureau. I think he said they've started it. And he gave a timeline of 6 months in January. So I don't know what the update is now, but the deputy governor.
So digitize has to mean that I can, because if I want to buy land in America, I log into a computer, I will see the land, I can pay, I can do everything from a computer. So when you say digitize, I know Nigeria has Land Use Act, and I know the governor must sign. So I'm never going to say, let's even go that route. I'm saying, right, is it possible that Lagos State can say, not any state can say, that the CFO itself will be digitized? The governor can sign on DocuSign. There's DocuSign. The governor can sign DocuSign. The physical CFO, I don't need it. But it has to be somewhere like in a wallet system whereby if someone wants to verify that title for collateral purposes, we mean that if I go to the bank and the bank wants to lend me money, the bank can simply log into that website, look up that digitized CFO and say, yes, Kalu owns this property. Then the bank can put a digital lien on that title and then give me a loan. So if I don't pay, the title just changes from me to the bank just by a signature, again, by the governor. We don't have to do the paper or back and forth. You create a market, you create tons of jobs. Now you can have that title company. Now you can have people doing this. Emeka, do you want to say anything on this matter specifically? I want to bring in Khadija very soon.
Yes, I want to speak to this matter. I think what you said about the fact that it's a space and we can discuss the problem, but let's talk about solutions. I think that's a very good thing. And I want to speak to places where it's been done and similar solutions that have been done in countries that look like us. Because I think that when we are trying to solve problems in Nigeria, it's not very great for us to look at one-to-one to maybe European countries, for example. Okay. So I'll talk about Ghana. I'm very familiar with Ghana. I used to live there for a very long time and I left recently. And yes, they also have a very similar problem with land titling, except in one place, and that is in Kumasi. Now, if you know Ghana very well, you know that Kumasi is Ashanti land, and Ashantis are extremely deferential to their king. He has a lot of power over the place, and he essentially made it very, very made the point that nobody can sell any piece of land twice. So if you go to Ashanti land and buy, which is Kumasi, and buy a piece of land, you know it's been sold and it's been sold to you, and nobody else is going to collect it. Like nobody is coming to you. So there's a mix of the native authority plus the government involvement, because the government in the country does give local rulers certain levels of responsibility, which they then have to essentially justify it by doing their jobs correctly. If you just Google what I'm talking about right now, you see that the Ashanti, the king recently distooled some chiefs for double selling pieces of land. So it's something people there are extremely careful about not doing.
Gotcha.
Another thing I want to speak to is a company called Seso Global that has signed an agreement with Cape Town to essentially digitize their property registry on the blockchain, just like you said. So I think when it comes to doing something like this, we need to think about something like the seat belt, for example, which wasn't a thing when cars were first of all invented. And then certain companies, did research, invented the seat belt, and then opened up the patent and said, look, anybody can use it because it's for the public good. I think that what we need to do is real estate companies need to come together and essentially, as a not-for-profit, come up with this system you're talking about, build it, because banks, real estate companies, because this is something that favors everybody. One of the reasons why we have enough debt capital is that, yes, nobody's going to involve themselves in any kind of piece of land that's going to give them problems. The last thing you want, I'm a new person, you joke about the ball, which is fighting for land, which can kill anybody. So we need to think about real estate companies, banks, coming together and as a not-for-profit idea, developing this system, just like you said, and then creating, systems where land can be transferred without even me having to see you physically. And if you unlock that piece alone, let's talk again in 5 years. I don't think we'll still be having a lot of these issues. A lot of the development issues we have is just in the lack of trust and lack of understanding of what will happen to me if I buy a piece of land that I've not been able to verify. One day they'll tell you, don't just buy a land that has just governor's consent. Buy the one that has this other one. How am I supposed to know all these things when I'm not involved in any real estate thing? So I just want to speak to, let's create solutions that are very unique to us. We respect our local authorities, for some reason, but we respect any Western anything. So involve the chiefs, involve the kings, and then come together and build these solutions that can help to potentially. Because when you do that, you can then start talking about things like you're creating this, just like Jobo Max I spoke about earlier, creating something similar for Nigeria. And then the person in the US that has never come to Nigeria in their entire life and does never intends to come to Nigeria can go ahead to invest their money in a piece of property somewhere, knowing fully well that if anything happens, that property can be repossessed on time. I think that's just what I want to speak to.
Good point. Khadija, what's up? Khadija, thanks for hopping in. I mean, I always want the ladies to speak because the ladies are nearer to the CFO role, right? So please, you've got the floor. I hope there's... Khadija, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. I just wanted to mention a few things and also clarify a few points. I hear people mentioning commercial banks. So basically, the model of branding for FMBN is that they don't operate through commercial banks. They operate through PMBs and PMIs. Those are the primary mortgage banks, and they are accredited primary mortgage institutions. So what the model of branding before is that you approach all these PMPs and then they are the one that do directly with the banks. And when the loan application goes through the loan production unit and the credit appraisal unit, the fund is being disbursed into to these PMPs, and then the individual will get the loan from the PMPs. But due to the jumps of outstanding balances and also the high level of the bad loans sitting in the books, they had to introduce other schemes, and then that's where we now have the national, we have the estate developers loan. And under the estate developers loan, we have a number of packages available to people that you don't need to go through the PMBs. You can approach FMBN directly and get your mortgage loan. Gotcha. We have the renovation loan. We have the ministerial pilot housing development loan, and we also have a package that is rent to own. So for that rent to own, it's like a rent to buy kind of package. So what you just have to do is just to walk into any FMPN office, then you submit a number of documents, and then you apply for this loan. I know a number of people that have gotten this loan, and it's I think it's for a number of years, and then it's like 7% or so that you have to pay back. FMBN has a lot of packages. I can make mention of that. They have even this ministerial pilot housing development loan is for the low-income group in the geopolitical zones. Those are the ones that they make this package for. They are the ones that can apply for this kind of package. And then the rent to own is like, okay, fine. When you have your NHS number, you're already subscriber to the National Housing Fund, you can, and you pay your rent every year. Instead of, you can have a kind of settlement with the bank in which that every money you pay to your landlord, it gets to, they consider it in your package, and then at the end of the day you get to own that house, or if it's a 1 bedroom, if it's a 2 bedroom or a flat or anyone, they have that kind of package as well. I just wanted to make mention of that. Thank you.
Great, thanks so much for giving us that clarity, and you just giving us more, information around the federal mortgage bank in Nigeria. I think my personal view for them, like I said, I applied for a loan in 2007. I've been approved. As of 2023, I don't have the loan. I still don't have the funds. I get it. There are a lot of demands on them. I get it, and I'm not here to pull anyone down. I think the only issue with them is just that the number of mortgages that have been created. The figure I quoted at the very beginning of the space was less than 35,000. I'm not sure if that was for 2021 or that was from inception till 2021. So whilst I do commend what they are doing, I think they need to do like 1,000,000 times more. That's just it, really. So we're not here to pull anyone down. If you can give them that message, they need to do more. It's not just them. I know they have issues with funding, but we need to get more monies out to successful folks that have applied for the Federal Mortgage Bank Nigeria loans. So thank you very much for the clarification. Do you work for them? Are you speaking for them, or is this just your personal view? Khadija?
Let's have a fair knowledge of the modus operandi.
Okay, I hear you. Super. Thanks so much for that. I appreciate that. Dr. Ijeri, you're on the floor, sir.
Okay, good evening, Carlo. Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for the opportunity. So, first of all, I want to start with Khadija. Thank you for that. So, what she clarified is really important in light of in the light of the fact that a lot of people don't know how the Federal Mortgage Bank operates. So that's one solution. Now, I applied last year, and you were talking about pathways to home ownership. So what I want to say is that from what I've not gotten it yet, excuse me, because I was told for the house I had in mind, I would need, I think 300 and something thousand naira per month to finance that and all of that. So I would need my wife to, come in, and you always talk about how marriage helps to reduce taxes. So I'm working on that end. So I think it's not something scalable yet. I don't think Federal Mortgage has done this for up to, maybe 10,000. I don't even think they've done for up to 5,000 people. But I'm just saying that there is a possibility, but it's very, very slim, very, very slim. That's number one. Then number two, I'm also into, so you mentioned idea of, what do you call it? House, property verification. Now that's something that I've done quite a lot. I do it in Ogun State, Oyo. That Oyo, what do you?
OYHOC.
Yes, the homeowners charter. Yeah, it's the best of my knowledge, because I didn't do it for. I didn't have anyone who I did it for, but to the best of my knowledge, it was not digital per se. Like, it was digitally signed and all, but it was not digital in the futuristic sense that you proposed. Now, I'm also aware, although I'm not at liberty to disclose too many details, but I'm aware that the Lagos State government has done the whole GIS for the entire state.
Nice.
But all I can say is political reasons are the reasons why that is not being translated, because I'm an architect, I'm also involved in urban planning.
Gotcha.
So I know this, but I can't say too much. But I'll just say political considerations are the things limiting some of those innovations, but those ideas are there. Now, I'm from Ogun State, so I will try to zero in on Ogun State as I wrap up. What I did, in fact, I currently help people apply for sales, and just like the other person said, real estate, I think, yes, it can be very, very dicey. You can almost put yourself in trouble. My state governor, I say this everywhere, he has not signed a single COO since he became governor. That's that value. And this is not a begrudge or anything, this is just a pure fact. So I have applied for COOs for people, I've taken money. I have had to even show some people my bank balance that say I didn't take your money. The money was paid to the state government, but the governor refused to sign. Now, where am I going with this? Ordinarily, I would have suggested, in terms of public mass housing, that a state like Ogun State, with proximity to Lagos, with people who are earning 300 to 600K, at least, I don't know the numbers, but there should be at least 50,000 of those people. I don't know. They should be able to get those kinds of Singapore houses, those high rises in Mowiba for access. There is land. I am sure there is land.
Yeah.
So what I think the government should do, or what I would suggest to the government to do, since we're talking about solutions, is number one, your COO is your power. So don't hold that power tight. Release it. Give people COO. Now, Ogun State has a mortgage bank, Gateway Mortgage Bank. I know Lagos State has their version, and I am aware that the government can fund them so that they can fund more mortgages because they have it. Now, I'm not a banker, so I don't know I know there are a lot of ratios and things they must, but I know they need to have capital basically. So I think the government should do that. Now fund the developer. So developer XYZ does the gets his COO from the state government.
Yeah.
10,000 units and all of that. So just as you have said, instead of us creating money, printing money to do all the other things that they are doing, we should print money. State government to federal government can get all of that, and then we can now, along that axis, waiver for all the way that Lagos Ibadan Expressway corridor can house 2 to 3 million people conveniently with 5 to 6 or 7 floors building.
Okay. Let me take you back a bit, if you could. The Oyo State Charter, like when you say what's digitized, where did they stop? So we know the normal process is there's a certificate, hard copy certificate. So what did they do different? It says here, what I'm reading here, it says that what's it called? Processing of question of CFO faster and affordable and all that. So what did they actually do?
Yes, so basically what they did was to have a special desk. So ordinarily you go to the Bureau of Lands or Ministry of Lands, and then they would take forever to process your land. But what they did was to create a special desk, and on that special desk with I don't know how many, they had about 3 offices, if I'm not mistaken, in different parts of the state, where people could now bring in those documents and sorry about that. People could now bring in those documents and have.
We'll let you go soon. Yeah.
So the dedicated desk was really the unique, what made it unique. So that dedicated desk now processed within 30 days. And yes, I know people who got theirs in, I think 30 or 60 days.
60 days.
Temporarily
60 days, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, thank you for the clarification. I mean, I know you have to go take care of your kid. Thank you so much. I just wish that we could it's a baby step, right? And I hear you talk about Lagos GIS. These are baby steps, but if you pull up the ease of doing business in Nigeria, if you compare Nigeria and Rwanda, transfer of title in Nigeria, our figure is atrocious, right? Where we score very, very low on a global scale. If you compare Rwanda, I believe Rwanda is at the top 10 globally in the world, and Nigeria is at the top maybe 20 least. We're at the very, very bottom. So if you can't control, say, transfer of title in Nigeria, if you can't make it, I don't know what word to use that. If that can't be made seamless, then what really are we doing in Nigeria? If land is oil in some states, and you cannot create a way where people can buy and sell that land and create transactions, then you can charge VAT on those transactions. Then really, what are we doing? And I have the figures here. So
please allow me to quickly come back. You mentioned something that you said VAT. So I think the state governors, one of my thoughts is that they don't see enough incentive other than beyond when they sell the land. So I'll use Ogun State as my example. So that there's there are two new corridors. There's the Jebode Ekwe Expressway corridor.
Yeah.
And there's that I'm sure you are aware of that. A lot of people are aware of that. Now that corridor there it has now been repurposed for industrial land, and I usually jokingly tell people, even my father's village land is now belongs to the government. But where I'm going now is beyond just citing the factory where the government, where the foreign investor or whoever pays a particular amount to buy the land. What is the other incentive for the governor? In the countries you've mentioned, the governor knows that once people come in, they are going to get 10%, 7 point whatever percent VAT every month. But after you've established your factory, is there any? I don't think there is any. So I feel the governors don't see enough incentive, and maybe it is our job as citizens to help open their eyes anyway. But I think they don't see incentive. I may be wrong.
So I mean, let me look at it this way, right? If you own a share, I know people that their father bought shares of, say, for instance, an old company, maybe UAC or no, Nigerian Tobacco. This would be a company called Nigerian Tobacco. Back then, it was a big company. It paid a lot of money in dividends. It was a big company. You have the certificate in your village at home. That's worth a lot of money, but it's just a certificate. What we need to do is to convert that certificate into a digital copy. Once you have that certificate, let's say you have a share of First Bank. Let's use an example. Somebody gives you 100 shares of First Bank in a certificate form. Your father bought those shares, then he gave it. If you hold that paper in your hand, it's worth nothing. You've got to take that paper to the stock exchange or to the central securities clearing system. You digitize that share certificate. Once it's digitized, you can sell it. But also when you sell, the stock exchange and the government can make money because now you are doing a transaction. It's the same with land. If you simply hold C of O, if you go to Ogudu, you go to Ikeja, Ikoyi, you have dead capital. Builders have been there forever. When the Queen was there, they have a C of O, but the title is not being transferred. The state gets no revenues. If I want to borrow on that land, I cannot because it's a C of O, right? It's paper. If you create this digital market for real estate, I could simply go there, put that certificate in there, go to a bank and say, I have digitized this land property. I want to get 100,000 naira. And the bank will say, sure, go ahead, because you have collateral. Same with a farmer. A farmer wants to buy fertilizer. He has no cash. But the farmer owns his land, but he can't use his land as the collateral because he has no C of O. So if you digitize the land, like you said, the GIS, and the farmer can go to an office and say, this is my house on the system, point to his house. That land there can be coded. Then he can say that land, I want to take that land and get a loan from the bank. The bank can loan him based on that land. The state gets tax revenues, right, on that land that they would not have gotten if the farmer is just farming on the land. So it's a win-win for everyone. The farmer gets his loan, the government gets their taxes, the banks are able to get more business because they are digitizing and creating a market around this mortgage. We have to think in terms of transactions. This C of O matter, you have a C of O, it's paper. It does nothing for the economy. It's dead capital. Ekene, what's up, man? You got the floor. Go for it.
Yeah, hello, Kalu.
Yeah, hi. Welcome back. Yeah.
I want to speak on what Khadija spoke about earlier on, but this time around relating from an institutional perspective. Growing up back then in Jos, my dad worked with the university, and then there was this system they did. They built houses as staff quarters, and then these houses were given to staff who then pay monthly. After 25 years or thereabout, at some point, these staff become full house owners, or these houses are given to the staff as sometimes retirement benefits, because you have to work for approximately 35 years according to the federal system. So within the 20 to 30 years, which would normally take you to pay a mortgage, you'll be paying monthly to the institution. And when it's time to retire, you pay up a certain bulk amount, which is not so high, and then you become the owner. One of the reasons why this system didn't really stay or wasn't sustainable for long was because when you retire, you're expected to leave the university premises so that new staffs can be onboarded and new houses can be issued out. But because these staff became house owners there, they couldn't be evicted. So this became a problem. I don't know if this is something that can be replicated again, but then taking the errors that they have observed over time, or probably institutions now begin to buy up lands and build up and allow their staff pay monthly. And when the staff is about to retire, they pay up a lump sum, which is equally not so high, but then they become house owners. So I don't know if that's something that would work in enhancing mortgage. Is just the suggestion.
It's easily fixable, right? To see that the university will have the right to buy back the home at the market price. So if the lecturer pays 10 million to buy the home and he has stayed here for 30 years in that same compound, the lecturer wants to retire to his village, just want to retire in the university. So he can go to the university and say, I want to sell the house. And the university can then buy the house back from the lecturer. The lecturer gets cash, and then the university can resell that home. Reverse mortgage, just a reverse mortgage, right? Instead of him getting a mortgage to buy the home, he's giving the home away to get an annuity, a payment. So he is giving the house to get cash, reverse of the mortgage. That's all that can happen. It's not a new thing, right? So he goes to his village, he leaves the university, but he gets the cash flow from that house that he owns. The university can then sell that house to a new young lecturer that can then take up that loan, and the lecturer is paying the mortgage to the retiring lecturer, but the actual equity is still owned by the retiring lecturer because it has accumulated 30 years equity. It's not a difficult thing to get around. The problem is that C of O matter, because who owns that land? The university will say we own it, lecturer says they own it. If you remove that thingy or you sort of edited it, right, then you can have reverse mortgages. And that's how you want to get it done. So many companies would basically build homes. So many companies, banks have trillions in their balance sheet, right? They could go buy land, build a housing estate, and sell to their staff and debit their staff. And if the staff is leaving Nigeria, the staff can sell that property very, very quickly on a marketplace. And the bank knows they're going to get, the bank knows they have an equitable mortgage, they can get their mortgage back, or they can get their cash flow back from whoever buys the home. But if you have CFO, will the bank be chasing each individual staff for CFO? So, it gets complicated, and we can fix it by simply fixing the Land Use Act. So mortgage in Nigeria, this is where we are coming to. The pathway for mortgage in Nigeria does not exist. And to fix it, you have to fix the financing, even the Land Use Act, even the way we look at housing as a revenue generator. Revenue generator and affordable housing won't go together. That's just my take, Mekere. Let me get beyond Mr. Yakubu. How you doing, sir?
Yeah, good evening, everyone.
Hey, how you doing, my brother? Go ahead.
I just wanted to chip in because I think the speaker before the last one made mention about issues of funding the developers and wanted. I think I've had to work in one way or the other with FMPN, CBN, and for me, what I realized is the major problem is policy coordination. You see, just remember that the FMPN fund is actually supposed to be a revolving fund. When people take, as you are making repayment, give others, and then the contributions come in. Now, where I work, there was a time that we spent 10 years. They were just putting that money into different accounts, not remitting to FMPN, because their modus operandi for us, it was a bit shed, and then we had to resolve that. Right? A lot of. Okay, I'm with you.
Go ahead. You cut off. Go ahead.
Okay, I said okay. Okay. Having said, I said there were a lot of issues that I've observed because there was time that we actually wanted to coordinate issue that has to do with mortgage, and I think you've done. There was a session you did on RSA mortgage that the pension industry is bringing up.
Yes.
Then I was part and parcel of the in fact we brought the guideline. I work with that institution, the regulator. Now what happened was there's this issue of NMRC, Nigerian Mortgage Refinancing Corporation, that came on board. I think when Ngozi was the Minister of Finance, it was a $3.6 million project from World Bank, NMRC, and then the mortgage guarantee company. Up to today, the mortgage guarantee company is not up. That's one thing. Secondly, the mortgages that are being issued out by mortgage companies and then developers, and the quality is very poor that NMRC cannot refinance those mortgages. And that may bring the issue of liquidity issue for the mortgage institutions. Because ideally what they are meant to do, if you give out the mortgage, you don't need to wait for the repayment. You go for refinancing through NMRC. NMRC will refinance your mortgage, issue a bond, get the resources up, refinance your mortgage, and from the inflow from the mortgage repayment, just like an asset backed, they will use that to pay back to the bondholders. Now, the issue is NMRC have some quality requirements that need to be put in place before they will refinance the mortgage. The mortgage need to meet some minimum quality requirement. But believe me, 70 to 80% of the mortgage is being issued cannot meet up with that.
Can you talk about those issues? Is it possible you share them so in case someone is listening, they can know how to package them? Is it possible?
Some of them are these things you made mention. Issue of the property rights, scalable, and the rest.
Okay.
You could see, a property that you go and somebody will build with encumbrance or disease on it, and then who would want to refinance that mortgage? Because eventually that mortgage could go back because there are issues on the land. Maybe issue of adjudication when the thing it's not in the favor of the person that actually issued that mortgage and things like that. People don't sit to do proper checks and balances before they commence buildings and what have you. That's one of the major things that we're facing. And then the second thing is the issue of equity contribution. That has been a very, very challenging task for people because they say you must pay a certain percentage upfront. How many people can afford to? More especially a government worker in Nigeria that has a minimum wage of 30,000 or thereabout. Where would you be able to source for the equity contribution? Some of them go to banks and then they get the equity contribution at a commercial rate, of which is very, very detrimental. Some of them could not even continue with it. And another challenge is that there's no foreclosure law in Nigeria. In mortgages, no foreclosure law.
Wow.
To the extent that yes, there's no foreclosure law. Check. There's not. Because if there's foreclosure law, then whenever things like that go, maybe in terms of repayment and whatnot, you can easily get through it because there are laws guiding those things. But no, there's not. Those are some of the issues that we will. And then we've tried to do some things concerning that. Like the first person that made mention of the lady that talked about rent to own. I think rent to own was this idea came into this country through I think Jai's Bank started this. What they do, the concept is if you want a loan for a mortgage loan from them, you show the property, they will pay for the property. Pay your own equity and their own equity. They value that particular property where it is, and then get what the rental value is for that for that property in that area. And then they will share the rental value based on the proportion of what you contributed and what they have put in their own scheme in the game. Now, what they do is that at the end of every year, the money you pay for rental is just servicing your what's it called?
That mortgage,
that is not yours, with what you pay to the bank. Then you pay back part of the principal to reduce their stake.
Yeah.
The more you reduce their stake, the more it reduces the amount you pay at rentals on annual basis. You understand?
Yeah.
Those were some of the issues. Yeah. Now we realized that issue, I think around 2014. That was when we first did the first equity guideline mortgage for RSA mortgage from Bangkok. And that couldn't pass through. There was an issue with that. And okay, let me just be explicit. That time, what we did was we are looking at if you take away money from the RSE, 25% of it. We did a simulation. I realized that look, if you take away 25% from the RSE, the effect it will have on that, the negative effect it will have on that RSE at the retirement of the RSE holder is huge. Now, what we did was to bring Mortgage Bankers Association, the NBAN, and the rest. I said, look, come. We have funds. Now, these are RSC holders, and then this is meant to be like more or less like their social security and retirement. We want most of them to have houses. What we'll do is that from their RSS will be used more or less as guarantees.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, not accessing it. It will be as a guarantee that at the end of the mortgage period.
I think a call came in. Don't lose you, sir. So come back. Oh, I think we lost him. Let's wait a bit. He was taking us there. Mr. Yakubu, can you hear me? If you can hear me, you cut off. So I'm just going to give you a few minutes to come back.
Okay. Am I back?
Yes, you're back. I lost you when you said at the end of you were talking about the RSA being used as a security. Yeah, that's where we lost you. Mr. Yakubu? Oh, wow, Mr. Yakubu. I really wish you would conclude. Can you hear me, sir? Okay, that was very interesting. If you guys don't know Mr. Yakubu, I think he works for the regulator, the PENCOM side, and he has given us a bit of the lay of the land, right? And you heard him say, yeah, go ahead. Are you back? Okay. You might be having issues with your connection. Let's talk offline. You are making some very, very good points. I would have wanted you to just keep speak, so you give us that regulatory side of the whole question. But if you can speak, you can. Otherwise, we're just going to shut down the space. We have about 2 minutes more. Can you speak? Okay. You might be having some issues. Okay. So, guys, let me just do a summary of what we've done today, right? So we want to talk today about a pathway to securing a mortgage in Nigeria.
Hello, Mr. Khan.
Yes. I can hear you. If you can hear me, you can go ahead and speak. Mr. Yakubu, sorry about that. I think you're off. Okay. So guys, we want to talk about securing a pathway to a mortgage in Nigeria. It was more of a rhetoric question because we know there was no pathway. But the idea was to have a conversation around how we can create a pathway. And we use a very extreme example. In Nigeria, with a good credit scoring, with great income, $1 million a month, that's good credit. If that Nigerian cannot get a loan to buy a home, then no Nigerian can get a loan to buy a home. So that's a bit unfortunate. And we'll try to identify the issues around why he can't get that loan. We said number one, supply is very, very low. Supply of new homes from developers is very, very low. Why? Funding, interest rates, lack of a credit guarantee scheme, lack of credit scoring. We talked about all these issues, right? We've also spoken about the personal, the guarantees of the individual themselves, if I want to save it in Naira that is under inflationary pressures, can I save enough to have 17 million? What are the wages in Nigeria? Things like that. And when you all put it together, we're talking about refinancing, we're talking about credit scoring, we're talking about identification of the individual before he can then get a loan. We're talking about the collateral registers. Are they digital? Are they paperwork? We're talking about land use act. All these are issues. We've also seen some good examples. We spoke briefly about Oyo State, even though it's not quote unquote 100% digital. At least they are looking in that direction. We also heard Lagos State is doing this. They're doing their mapping of Lagos State, and the guy said, "God, political reasons it's not out yet." But hopefully, we want to hear some good news in that light, because once Lagos does it, it does push other states to do theirs as well, and then we have a more digital land registry, which makes cost of transferring land cheaper, and ultimately should make mortgages fall, right? So it's material, right? Mortgage rates in Nigeria are 17 to 25%. Nobody's going to borrow money at 25% for 30 years to buy any house. It just doesn't make any sense. You are better off renting, right? So these are also issues that we'll have to talk about. We are happy the Pension Commission has issued those guidelines on the 25% to be used as a down pay for a house. Is brilliant. We want them to also liaise with the National Housing Fund, because I saw on the FAQ for National Housing Fund that you cannot use your RSA as a down payment. So I think there's a bit of opportunity for them to agree their books there. If the pen company is saying you can use 25%, I think the National Housing Fund, which is still the same federal government, should also be able to allow that guideline. So we can say your down payments for National Housing Fund projects can also come from your RSA. That would also help a lot if we're able to get that done. And of course, the cost of building materials has just got to fall. Even if we have good credits, even if we have Land Use Act amended, if cement is 5,000 a bag, nobody's going to build a home in Nigeria. So long and short, it's a lot of things that have to happen. We have to have small wins and big wins before we can start to see mortgage supply increase. The only thing that would make a price of a home fall is increased supply. That's the end goal. The more we increase the supply of homes, the more the prices fall and the more Nigerians can buy those affordable homes, and the more we can then get onto that pathway to a mortgage and hopefully a pathway to getting equity, which is a pathway to wealth. All right, guys, thank you so much for spending your holiday with me, Kalu Aja. I appreciate you all. Let's meet again next week, where we'll have on that topic that's going to talk about your money, your finance, and of course your wallet. So on that note, I'm going to sign out. You guys can still get my book. It's down on Amazon. Let's talk about your money. Great recommendation. Talks about personal finance, every topic, budgets to mortgages to buying bonds to crypto. Everything is in there. Something to plug for you guys. Go get that book on Amazon. And I'll see you guys next week. Thank you and enjoy your holidays, and bye.